I'd like to speak to my husband.
So would I.
There we go. What time is it? Where are we going?
We're going to Disneyland.
Klein, open it up. Winley, Klein, open it up. What the hell y'all doing back there, huh? Huh? A little reading? Huh? Break.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Blood and Micron podcast. I'm Ryan from Coldsploitation.com, and I'm joined with my co-host Martin.
How's it going?
We're doing pretty well. We're here after the Halloween season. Finished out our series on Saxon Samhain.
Another great series in the books.
That's right.
Allegedly.
We took an extended hiatus, a couple weeks. Last week, just didn't really feel like doing the podcast. Just didn't feel up to discussing movies at that time. And it was a good thing we didn't technically do last week's. We were trying to figure out what we wanted to do for the show, and I think we ended up deciding on The Crazies as a movie that we wanted to talk, the original Crazies, not the Timothy Olyphant remake, because kind of wanted to sneak a George A. Romero film in there at some point. And we ended up postponing that one because something more important within the societal hemisphere cropped up. And I'm talking about the death of Tony Todd at 69 years old. Died a few days ago from now when we're recording this podcast. And yeah, Tony Todd was I would say a substantial figure. Even though, when you think about some of the other horror icons, I would say Tony Todd has probably the smallest role of all of the horror icons. And I say that, I guess, loosely because someone like Kane Hodder, if you were just to see him sometimes, people don't recognize him as being like one of the faces of Jason from the Friday 13th series, and not even some of the best Jasons, just a Jason. But he's just really well known for it and has become sort of that icon of the Friday 13th series, even though he's just one part of a Jason. His visage isn't even used really. His physique is used, but his visage is not used in Friday the 13th at all. Whereas, someone like Tony Todd, who does have a smaller oeuvre of film, is widely recognizable because he literally is Candyman. I mean, his face, his demeanor, his voice, everything about it is basically Candyman. It has become the representation of Candyman. Whereas you can't say the same thing for like Michael Myers, Jason. Probably the only other one would be Freddy. And even then, Freddy is disguised underneath a whole bunch of burn makeup and things like that. So, but Tony Todd is just instantly recognizable as the person who is Candyman. And that's pretty cool. I think that's a lasting part of his, his filmography. Right? Yeah. And not only that, but, he's Candyman was the biggest one, but he made a lot of appearances in low budget horror movies, bigger movies as well, but just in general made a lot of appearances, just for the love of the game. Again, it's kind of like how we talk about some of the other, thespians of cinema. He just showed up in movies because people wanted him and he was there. So it's pretty cool, and another one of the big ones I watched recently that he was in was one of the Hatchet sequels, which I didn't really care for those movies that much, but kind of cool to see him show up in those movies a little bit. Just a very good actor for what he did. And again, too, it's kind of funny because when you're someone like Tony Todd, the physicality, the instant recognition of the voice, you kind of get typecast a little bit in terms of like it's hard to get out of that shtick that you've been stuck into with that type of character. So, him showing up in all these other low budget horror movies and things like that, pretty cool. To see him, just out there doing something for, as a cameo appearance. So RIP Tony Todd. And that's, the biggest reason why we wanted to do Candyman for this episode, because it was a nice retrospective for Tony Todd, when arguably his most important work, and also just a damn fine movie. Now you said that you used to watch this quite a bit, and you said it would air on like UPN all the time. Is that what you said? Like a TV airing?
Yeah, it used to be on UPN or like TBS all the time. And I remember seeing it like quite a bit in like my youth, from anywhere between like 9 and 12, at least like 4 times.
I feel like that's just like so odd for this movie to be aired on TV, because when you really get down into it, this movie is a pretty divisive and somewhat complex movie, where you kind of, with the themes that it deals with, where it's not just like a sit down and watch it on TV with the commercials cutting in type of movie. In my opinion, I just find it hard to believe that it was just, aired so often on TV, where people were just like tuning in and out for Candyman. But, especially watching it now, I think, as we'll talk about when we get into the, get further into talking about the movie, it has a lot of complicated elements to it, and themes, sort of philosophies and sociological perspectives. It's just not something that I feel like goes over well on like a UPN or, a dinner and a movie with TBS, but, it's pretty funny. I never caught it on TV. I've definitely never seen it on TV. I think, I don't think I saw Candyman in full until like maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Whenever it first came out on Blu-ray is, I think, the first time I actually sat down and, actually watched Candyman. And it's had a couple of subsequent releases from there as well. Like we watched the 4K UHD version of it that recently came out from Scream Factory and Arrow Video. So it's had a couple of different releases, and not only that, but in 2021 we got the Candyman remake, which we have still not covered as well. I think we wanted to, or planned on trying to cover it, and we never got around to it. Which I still haven't seen myself. Didn't, once that came out, I didn't really check it out. So I'd be interested now, after we watch this one, to kind of go back through and see, hey, what's that remake all about? How's it hold up?
I think it's technically a remake, because it's like a sequel and like a remake.
Uh-huh. So yeah, a requel, if you will, I think is sometimes how they refer to them, which is, that matches like with pretty much what every other movie was doing for like major slashers and things like that in the 2020s. Right up there with Halloween, and requels are all the rage. Because I think you're right. I think it explores what happens to Helen at the end of this movie, in some capacity. So, interesting. And we'll definitely have to do that at some point after we get done with our Candyman discussion.
I was just gonna say, and going off of that too, this has been a movie too that has been on our radar for like years, that we've been wanting to do on the podcast.
Yep.
Because it is, I would say, a pretty iconic slasher film for the 90s.
Yep.
Has its nice little niche.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about that. Yeah, we'll talk about that in terms of like the other slasher movies of the time. Because, and I think it's it's quite different than what you would expect from a traditional slasher movie. And then also, too, this movie is based on the short story by Clive Barker, which this movie does not really make much note of that. I do think that there is a like quick blurb is like, based on the story by Clive Barker, which the story, it's been a while since I've read the Books of Blood that the story's in, but I feel like it's pretty much very different except in the name alone and sort of that idea of the ghostly, presence of Candyman as a figure that was murdered and then comes back. Other than that, I don't really think that this movie has that much in common with the actual short story. I think this movie fleshes out Candyman as an idea a lot more than that story could or does. But again, like I said, it's been a while since I've read it, so I can't quite remember everything that happens in it. All right, let's take a break real quick. And let's talk about the beer that we have on the show today, because just like Candyman, we do have another sort of nostalgic beer for Martin specifically. One that really made an impression.
How dare you? It's nostalgic beer for both of us, don't you?
Yeah, it is, but mostly for you. You're the one that kind of holds it in the highest esteem. Just one that was a very impressionable beer in our growing up drinking craft beer. So, what'd you get for us today?
So, we haven't had one of these. We haven't had a beer from this brewery in a long time because, which today the brewery is Saranac, based in Utica, New York. One of our first big craft breweries that we got into, and it's kind of the Sam Adams of New York,
Yeah.
Except, and their themes are the nice Adirondacks, even though Utica's smack dab in the Mohawk Valley, but whatever.
Yeah, probably one of the most readily available beers in this area besides Sam. Yeah.
I was gonna say, but like Sam too, and the reason why we don't really have Sam Adams on the show anymore is because this brewery, their quality has gone pretty fucking downhill over the past decade. Don't know why, and I don't really tack it up to us having like this elite palate now that we've drank so many Fidens beers now that I honestly do think the quality, just like with Sam's, has gone downhill quite a bit because they're fine with their little niche of we make the craft beers that the guy that's on vacation's like, hey, look what beer I got. Saranac. Sam Adams, And they're,
look at how Adirondacky this is. When in Rome,
Yeah. And it's, and they're big enough to where they can get away with it. So, whatever. But one of the best Saranac beers both of us have either had was about 14 years ago, during the New Year's Eve bowl drop at your wife's, then at the time, girlfriend's house, when we were doing that like we usually do. You got some Saranac, their new winter release, which was their White IPA, which was a IPA brewed with orange peel and coriander and spices to make it kind of Belgian-y, a little weedy too.
Yeah, basically like smashing a Blue Moon or a Shock Top into an IPA.
Yeah. And by God, was that beer fucking amazing. I've been chasing that high for forever. The beautiful pairing of the orange and the coriander and the spice and the weediness with the IPA fit perfectly. It was great. It was a perfect beer.
You could say this white IPA is your white whale, right?
Yes, because it was so good. They only had it for that year, and then the next year, and then they stopped, and then they did it one more time 2 years later, and then they just stopped. Because if you have been a long time listener, one thing I've constantly bitched about when we've done red IPAs, black IPAs, these garbage style IPAs that I don't think have a place in the world. I'm like, why doesn't anyone do a white IPA? That white IPA from Saranac was so fucking beautiful and such a beautiful idea, pairing a Belgian with an IPA. Fucking brilliant. Well, it's been 14 years and they finally, in their winter pack this year, The White IPA is back. It's kind of like how for years with them too, I was bitching, like, bring back the Big Moose Pale Ale for the love of God, because that was American Big Moose Pale Ale, because it was so good. And the last time they did it and I had it, I was disappointed with that. And I hate to say it with this, I am so fucking disappointed. Because this doesn't come close to what this beer once was. And I feel really sad because the recipe's different. Because the orange peel is non-existent. The coriander spice is barely there. It's barely Belgian-y. It tastes just like a mediocre West Coast IPA with a hint of bready wheatness to it. And that's it. And that really fucking pisses me off so bad. I don't know why they didn't just do the same goddamn recipe as before. And they didn't, and it's just, I'm just so, like, upset and so distraught. Like, it's a barely passable craft beer, like, West Coast, like, traditional IPA. Like, there's nothing of nuance or note here. It's just, here's a West Coast IPA. I don't know where, like, is it like a hint? Was it, like, stored near an orange barrel of oranges and coriander? So that's why it's got, like, just like the subtlest of kiss of it, like, in there. Yeah. Because, like, it is non-existent, and it's really annoying. And really makes me mad that I spent $22 on this fucking variety pack. And I knew it was going to be like this, and I couldn't help myself. I had to. Go and try it, and so
yeah. I mean, I would agree with you. I don't think this is the best showing for Saranac for sure. It is kind of like a standard IPA, and then it has, like you said, a really slight hint of orange. Coriander is pretty much non-existent, so the actual Belgian wheatiness of this beer is really minimal. To the point where it doesn't really seem too similar to a white IPA to me. You would expect the coriander to be a lot more explicit in this, and I feel like it's just passable as a white IPA. As an IPA, it's certainly drinkable. There's nothing wrong with it from that regard. It doesn't really necessarily, capture the spirit of what it's trying to do though. And so I think it's fine. It's drinkable. Like, it does go down smooth, but at the same time, I don't think it's a great, rendition of the style. So, again, I can't say for certain, it's been 13 years now, whatever. So I don't know if the recipe has changed or what, but it's, a pale example of a white IPA, in my opinion. I've had much better white IPAs that truly do get to that, like, sort of middle ground between an IPA and then, like, your Belgian wheat. Coriander, orange, citrusiness. So it's okay. Not something that would make me probably want to go out and grab this winter pack for myself. The 12 pack, which I think it's a varietal. It has 4 different beers in it. Saranac has failed to appeal to me for like the past few years now in terms of what they're doing, and again, I don't really see too much reason to stop boycotting them. So, but it's okay. And I knew it was going to happen. And I warned you. I said, you know what? You're 100% going to be disappointed. And you were 100% disappointed. So,
well, you have to give it the college try.
Yeah. I mean, it was worth trying again, but you know what? Fool me once, shame on me. So, I don't know. We'll see, though. We'll see. And now I'm going to crack open the Black Forest cake and see how that holds up, because that's been a while since I've had as well. So, give that a try. All right. Let's get into Candyman.
Candyman.
Whoa,
Candyman.
wait a second. How many times are you going to say that?
A billion.
Be careful. Are you near a mirror?
No.
Do you like the idea of the sort of Candyman 5 times, which kind of takes on the mythology of Bloody Mary?
Yeah, isn't Bloody Mary 3 times.
3 times. Right, exactly. So Candyman, by extension, it being 5 times, must be that much worse to conjure, since Bloody Mary is only 3. You got to say it 3 times. Yeah, like, so I guess getting into that a little bit, the movie Candyman has a lot about urban legend and mythology, right? Because the whole beginning of the movie is actually about Virginia Madsen's character, Helen, and her friend, Bernadette, and they're both working together on their thesis at college for their master's. And they are exploring the idea of urban legends. And I think the film kind of leaves out what the meaning of their thesis truly is in terms of like, what are they saying about urban legends? Do they spread like wildfire through communities? Do they manifest themselves, or are they conjured by something specific that's needed in society? Like, I think the film kind of winks to you at like, wow, they must have some really great thesis here that they're working on, because they even at one point meet up with like this tenured professor they're like, we're gonna bury you, like you're the urban legend guy and we've got something better than you. It's like, what is it, like? what is your overall thesis that you're trying to say
here? Yeah,
but I like the idea though that it does take this urban legend literally in an urban setting, and the mythology and the story of how that can manifest and how it spreads through a community and what it does to a community too, because this movie set in urban Chicago is a lot about how the urban community is both segregated and brought together by this idea of Candyman. And it does, the mythology of it is really interesting to me, especially when you compare it to something like Bloody Mary, which has its own mythology to it. And they've kind of created a Bloody Mary kind of stand-in here with Candyman. So when you were in school, which one was more popular, Candyman or Bloody Mary?
Bloody Mary.
Yeah, I would say that as well. Like, no one ever was going around that I know of saying like, what if we said Candyman in the mirror?
There's people I know that like they knew Candyman, but like, it was like Bloody Mary was like everyone's, first, like Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary. Yeah.
And I think like in the movie, at the beginning of the movie, Helen's getting into this study of Candyman specifically, and she's hearing from different college people all these stories of Candyman that, may be true, may be made up. They just kind of are passed down through other people. They even kind of bring up the idea of the urban legend of like the alligators in the sewers as well as being sort of this sort of, a similar idea of things that didn't happen but could presumably have happened to one person, and they spread.
What a basic bitch fucking college course that is too. What is this, like literature for idiots? Like, this here is our own folklore, our own passing of stories. Oh, very good. Oh, so wise. This you, Trevor, Professor Trevor. You so smart.
I mean, I think I see what they're going with there, because like again, so this movie was made in 1992. We have to wait. What, like 4 more years until we get Urban Legend, right? Because we did that for 90s Slasher Month.
I think I think 6 more years. Right? Didn't it come out in 98?
Maybe, yeah. Off the top of my head, I don't know. 98. You're right. Yep. So 6 more years. But in Urban Legend, we also deal with a very similar idea of college kids sitting around talking about urban legends in their courses as though this is like a field of study that they're going into. It's just like, masters of urban legends, like, cause you have your town historian, right? So now you have to have your town urban legend historian as well sitting around.
We have that. His name is Fred Gwynn.
yeah, right.
He pops up and goes, don't go down that road.
Right, exactly.
A lot of things happen up on that road.
Again, I do think that the film plays fast and loose with this idea that Helen and Bernadette are onto a hot topic here about the urban legend of Candyman. Again, I'm not really sure what kind of conclusions they're drawing from it, because
it's like Nancy Drew.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, the film kind of plays with that too, because it has that funny like opening scene where they're going to, this kind of ghetto setting, in their inner city, and they're going into this building that's called Cabrini Green, which is a, like, you know, kind of in the projects, as they call it, within this Chicago inner city area. And so they go and they dress, Virginia Madsen's character tells them to dress conservatively. So they go and they basically have their pantsuits on, and, you know, Virginia Madsen's looking a little bit like Hillary Clinton in the 90s there with her hairdo. And, you know, they basically go in and they all the people in the Cabrini Green, they think that they're cops, like, you know, undercover cops, or, you know, they've come in, you know, in their best dressed suits, and they're investigating without, you know, actually having to explicitly say that. So, you know, it kind of draws that conclusion that, like, they are, you know, from this kind of hoity-toity community within, you know, Chicago, that is far apart from the people who live in Cabrini Green. And I do, you know, the movie does make kind of those connections between, look how weird it is. This white woman's coming into this community, trying to study their community about Candyman and their mythology about an urban legend like Candyman, and understand it. And, you know, she's not welcome there in that part of the area. It's a, you know, again, it's sort of, it has that idea of, like, societal implications of studying this, and how the mythology has spread throughout the community, and what it does for the community, because the film kind of explores the idea that sometimes the mythology is used for bad too, right? Because there's a guy that pretends like he's Candyman in the area, and he uses that story of Candyman to basically be the thug in the area that, you know, and his gang are just coming around and killing people that look too far into the Candyman mythos. So, I think it's an interesting idea. And like I said before, I think that sort of, you know, melding of urban legend, urban cityscape is complex, and it does sort of make me wonder how many people were watching Candyman just for it to be like a slasher, you know, like your standard slasher fare, and getting something a lot more than they bargained for when they were watching this. Because I would say that this movie, and I don't know if you agree, but this movie doesn't have most of the slasher elements to it that you would expect from a classic slasher movie of the time. It doesn't have nubile co-eds or teens, right? I mean, Virginia Madsen, while bodacious in this movie, is, you know, not your stereotypical camp counselor. It doesn't have a masked killer. It doesn't have many slashings. It doesn't really focus on the death so much of its characters, because death is in the movie, but the death itself is not really the main, the main focus of the movie, following people as they're murdered. It's kind of a byproduct of the rest of the movie with the mythology of Candyman. So it's not really a slasher in the most common sense. So how do you think, like, does that work towards Candyman's advantage, or do you think people, you know, especially during the time, and of course this was in 1992, so we would have been 3 years old when it came out. We didn't experience it at the time, but do you think people were disappointed that it wasn't like another slasher movie from the 80s, you know, that we're just getting out of that sort of slasher heyday of all of the, you know, the slasher movies that were coming out at that time?
I think Candyman does a really good job at being different. Like, it knows it's different.
Mm-hmm.
It's trying to be different, and it's smart in how it's different, I think. And I think if you're coming here for your generic, you know, body, you know, violent body count, you're not going to get that here. But at the same time, though, when you think about it, when it comes to a lot of slasher films, usually the first one is the tame one.
Mm-hmm.
The one where the kill count and everything's, you know, more grounded and real.
Right.
It takes the sequels for you to get into,
kind of get out of the,
you know, to get into the ridiculous of, like, Jason picking a girl up in a sleeping bag and slamming her into a tree to death, you know, type of shit. So I think if you come in with an open mind, you know, the idea of Candyman himself, I think the hook is enough. Because this film is...
What about the bees, though? Don't forget about the bees.
Yeah.
the bees are another like large part of Candyman. You know, at the time too, we were getting bombarded with bees between the Silence of the Lambs and the Candyman having bees on him, bombarded with bees. But
John Saxon's The Bees.
that was probably 30 years ago, but the point still stands. But yeah, I agree. I mean, like, you were getting something different here. You weren't getting, first of all, like you said, the hook itself is sort of the hook of the movie, right? Because it's an iconic looking figure. This guy's got a hook for a hand. We didn't have I Know What You Did Last Summer yet. He's got a hook for a hand. He's this imposing figure, for one thing. Not only that, he's a black figure, which again is not something that we were accustomed to. Though I would say that they don't, most of the time, slasher movies aren't predicated on, the race of their killer. It's pretty much always a white dude, right? Like, clearly a white guy. Michael Myers, clearly a white guy. Look how slow he walks. It's just fucking,
Well, yeah, haven't you seen the clip of him driving around listening to Alice in Chains Nutshell?
Yeah, exactly.
White guy.
So, like, the idea of it being a black slasher as well is sort of in itself really an intriguing premise. And then, again, the fact that it's set in an urban setting, because slashers generally weren't set in urban settings too much. It was always on the outskirts, right? You'd be in the forest, you'd be in an area where you were more likely to be in danger because you didn't have help. The urban cityscape in this movie sort of paints a weird urban Gothic tone, right? Because the idea of the building, the Cabrini Green, and then the parallelism to Virginia Madsen's skyscraper that she lives in as a condo is again in itself like this weird urban setting that we generally would not get from a slasher movie set in like a high-rise building. That's very odd. It's not a common setting for those types of movies. I think it all adds a lot to it. And, especially like the idea of setting it in that urban environment where, as a transplant for a viewer as well, it kind of feels like a odd atmosphere, especially with like, all the graffiti and everything.
Well, so, it's purposeful and the contrast works brilliantly because again, if you think about it, Candyman works as like a detective, like kind of noir film at times, because when Virginia Madsen's Helen, when she's going around with Bernadette around Cabrini Green, even though they are studying for their thesis on urban legends and how it relates to racial inequality in these places, it is kind of like detective work they're doing here. Mm-hmm. Not only that though too, we get to see literally she lives in a building that was originally designed to be like an apartment project like Cabrini Green, mm-hmm. but because redlining, blah blah blah, it's actually this regular old apartment that like they with this bourgeois, educated elite lifestyle, and you see it from the decorations and the ridiculousness of like the like her apartment and how it looks, and then it's contrasted with this the actual Cabrini Green project and the people that live there, and then seeing how it's a to-do when she's over there because, she's a white woman, and then like the response, when the police come, it's like, white lady in trouble, blah, blah, blah.
Well, someone was dispatched post-haste.
White lady. And then, but I mean, like, so like it plays with all of those, racial tropes and realities, and then flips it on its head the second time where she's the black person. She's the other, and she's getting, she doesn't understand like what the hell's going on. Like, why is this detective yelling at me? I just want my husband, Yeah. And so you get to see that like throughout the film. And the film takes like 50 minutes to get there, like through all these parts. And so like it is a slow burn with not a lot of like actual horror action. And then not only that, Candyman don't show up until like 44 minutes into the film. So
Right.
you get to see like all this like nuance that the film's, going through. It's very overtly political and like, taking these like racial dynamics and putting it into the film.
Yeah, which is, I do think, again, like the complexity of that and then mirroring those ideas, like you said, of her first going to Cabrini Green, being the outsider, and then finding out like, she being treated sort of like the black person who they were like, basically hounded after they found out that a white woman was injured. They basically just rounded up everybody in Cabrini Green and said, you're getting your ass down there to the precinct and we're going to find out who did this. It is, it's pretty, and not only that, but like the other, thing that it points out is like, they just let her go, right? Like she chopped off, they think that she chopped off a dog's head and then murdered this poor black lady in her own house and stole the kid. And they're like, you're free to go, man. Go back on your own recognizance and we'll come get you when we need you for jail. So like there is that sort of idea of, how the disparity going on there, and the idea of the mirror images of Cabrini Green and this other, condo that it could have been is really great too, especially when you see Virginia Madsen, who's, now basically gone insane at the end of the movie, not just because she's deemed insane, but also because of just her connection to Candyman. And she goes back to her apartment, and her really asshole husband, who has been just the worst person throughout this entire movie, has now brought home his girlfriend, which we all knew as the viewer. We knew that he was seeing this like underage undergraduate that he had in his class, and he's brought her there, and they're painting the condo pink, and it just kind of shows
what an awful look too.
The ridiculousness of this condo that now Virginia Madsen recognizes as well. She's like, I fucking hate the color scheme. Like this is horrible for one thing.
I can't believe he was like, that seems like an idea where she was like, I want to paint the apartment pink. And he's like, sure, as long as you show me your titties.
Right. Yeah, because you're right. It's like it's like an awful salmon pink.
And he comes out too wearing like a cigar like robe, like with like the foofy crap on the for like the neck, and he's like, oh, Helen, like you'd think with the way when she's hearing like the she wasn't gonna be walking in on like oh, you're painting the apartment over.
Yeah, right.
Like oh
yeah.
You're stuffing the girl. Okay,
I know I think like those all those ideas are, there's a pretty complicated movie at play here with the gentrification of society, how it explores the urban mythology, how it gets into, someone using that urban mythology, how Candyman himself wants to retain that mythology as well. Like, because Helen's coming in here and kind of dispelling the idea of Candyman being around. And he's like, wait a second. No, I need to maintain my legacy in this area. Like this white lady just doesn't get to come in and say, I don't exist anymore. I fucking exist here. And then not only that, but you have the whole mythology of Helen actually potentially being sort of this historical figure, or possibly the woman that Candyman originally had an affair with, that he, was killed over, because in the story, Candyman himself is a, son of a slave, has an affair with a white lady of rich blood, and that's just not okay. And so they basically end up.
Well, not only that, his family ends up being rich too, because they invent like something that speeds
like
up shoe making after the Civil War. So
yeah, so it's again, it also explores like that idea how, even though they're rich, they're not white person rich, right? And so there's that whole mythology of the way that Candyman is brought into existence. And I guess, there's some study and opinion of whether Candyman had always existed, or if Helen willed him into existence, or even if this is basically Helen's story, because at the end of the movie, in I think a pretty ingenious turn, Trevor accidentally conjures Helen saying her name 5 times, and she comes back and then starts the murdering process over. And I think that's a really cool idea of like now she's mythologized in terms of, the very dramatic portrayal of her coming into this urban landscape, saving a young child from a burning pyre, basically, and then basically singeing herself to death because she crawled out of the fire and brought this child to safety. There's this sort of mythologizing here as well, that kind of turns her into her own urban legend that lasts throughout now. As now we're not saying Candyman, we're saying Helen 5 times into the mirror. So I think it's really ingenious. It has, it's a very complex idea, which is why I do find it so strange that UPN was just like, sure, air Candyman, right? Like people just sitting down comfortably, having dinner, having a beer, barely paying attention. Like, oh yeah, Candyman's hacking somebody up over there with the hook, and it only happens like 4 times in the movie, maybe total. Movie is violent in itself, and it has these strange like sexual connotations as well. Like every time Candyman murders someone, he's doing it in like a grunting, like I'm possibly having sex as well as killing someone with a hook. So there's the whole like lingering, sizzling sexuality at play here too. Especially interracial sexuality. Like, again, I'm just sitting here thinking in the 90s, UPN being like, throw it on.
Well, again,
maybe people didn't think too critically of it at that time.
Well, hold on. You're forgetting the whole fact that like films like this would get, edited quite vigorously.
True.
Have you never seen like Scarface on TV? How'd you get that scar? Eating pussy. On TV, how'd you get that scar? Eating pineapple.
Yeah. I mean, I could see, and they probably had to cut that whole scene with Virginia Madsen in the police department, right? Because she's covered in blood and dropping her boobs and all that. So yeah, I agree. I mean, maybe there was just so much cut that it was just kind of like neutered down to Candyman kills people.
I don't really think there's that much to really even be cut out, to be honest with you. Because again, the film's not very over, like the violence, most of it takes place off screen, and it's more, the shock. I think, because we watched the uncut version, I think the one part that we got in there that isn't in the original version is just the psychiatrist being fucking butchered by Candyman.
Yeah, there's just a couple more seconds of the butchering going on. Like, I think you see explicitly, like, him stabbing through him in the back, and that's like the addition to the uncut version. But yeah, I mean, it's not super violent. I just think, again, the subject matter of it itself, like, doesn't really invite like casual watching, in my opinion, because I do think there is an element to it, and not only that too, but it is a kind of grim movie in general. From the amount of death and killing that occurs, within the projects, to the fact that, there's a child kidnapping. It's just kind of a grim movie. The ending of it is kind of a downer. I don't know. Just find it hard to believe people are just casually watching it. But, what do you think about the score from Philip Glass?
It's good.
I think it's really good.
It's kind of, it's like a nice mix of like Carpenter-esque synths at time, and like,
it's got like that
Tim Burton-y, like,
synthy choral arrangement. You're getting at like Danny Elfman style chorality to it, and I mean, I liked like sort of to the classic-y operatic piano that it's got at times, like it's kind of got that element of like classiness to it, which I think that this movie tries to bring as well. Like there's a classiness to it where at the beginning, because you're expecting that from this like gentrified area of scholarly study, and then it kind of devolves later on into a more visceral experience as it goes. And I think that works really well, like even with the score that kind of draws your attention to how it devolves. I think this movie has a lot of crazy elements to it. Like Tony Todd having to scarf down some bees. I mean, that's like, was it necessary? No. Did it add to the production? I think so. Was it worth Tony Todd getting $23,000? I think so. For his
pain and suffering.
Yeah, suffering and being stung that many times. I think so. I think it was worth it. I think it adds to the viscerality again of it, because obviously again they didn't CGI bees in there. It has a nice realistic, progression to it. So I like it. I like the bees as well. What do you think about the whole idea of this gentrification though? And do you think that Virginia Madsen here is meant to be like seen as a white savior sort of complex?
Yeah, I think the fact that she's kind of it kind of makes it seem like she's on safari. Like, it's like
wow, whoa,
yeah, like whoa, look at this,
look what's going on over
here. Like what, look at this neighborhood, like
yeah,
just,
like I think one of the best ones,
like it's kind of like it's like a side. Like, again, like, come on, if you really want to one up the professor, and when it comes to his thesis, we have to go, into the ghetto to find out. Like, just don't, just watch the news. We have to go there for ourselves.
Right. Like, you're an intrepid journalist.
Yeah.
Venturing into uncharted territory. I think the most telling one is when she goes into the men's bathroom, and she's, like, again, too, because...
What a bathroom too. Who's that? Who would be going to take a shit or piss in there?
Right.
Like,
as
you see that thing. Like, you open the first stall, and you see the toilet bowl's like caved in. But you know what? I'll go take a shit in the parking lot.
Because like, again, too, there's that whole idea of like, as a viewer, you're like, this is a fucking stupid idea. Like, you don't know what you're getting into. Just like venturing into the men's bathroom, like, I'm just gonna be in here and take some pictures, guys. Don't worry, I don't mean any harm. It's kind of got that naivety to it that makes it absolutely ridiculous. And then you're like, you know what? She found out, right? After she gets bonked in the head with the hook, and her eye swells up. She found out. She being stupid bitch, right? Like, just venturing in where she doesn't belong. And I think that the film kind of nicely makes that point. Because everybody in this, I mean, I would say Virginia Madsen's not a dislikable character. It's just that she's naive. Yeah. She's naive, and she just doesn't have good judgment. And, again, like we talked about, there's sort of that white savior complex of she's going to come in and like save the day. She's already gotten this one bad guy taken off the streets, and she's saving the lives of these children. There's kind of a white savior complex here of like, she needs to come in even when she sees the mom, and she's like, here, let me help you with that. Let me take care of that for you, because I'm a white woman and I can help out here. I think intentionally the movie is trying to play that up. Yeah. I'm like, anything else that you wanted to discuss here? I think we wanted to get into a little bit, how much of an asshole Trevor is throughout the movie. Because I love fucking Xander Berkeley in this movie, because he does have just a look to him of just like, yeah, you're going to be a smarmy asshole kind of guy. Like, I've seen him in a couple different movies.
I was going to say, kind of like the guy in what the hell was the Cronenberg movie with Jeremy Irons?
Dead Ringers?
Dead Ringers, yeah. The one guy that's kind of in there. And it's just
he has this look to him, especially the movie plays it up quite nicely as, like his professor style. And I like too how much he's just like not even trying to make it so that Helen doesn't find out about his infidelity. He's just a modicum of just like,
the girl's like walking away with pussy dripping up the stairs, and she's like, "Oh, you fucking her?" And he's like, "No, she's just one of my adoring fans." And she's like, "I know you would never cheat."
Yeah, it is, or like when he comes home and she's made all this nice dinner for him, and he's like, "Oh, Oh, I gotta eat with you. Just a dripping disgust from his face. I love it. I love this guy because you love to hate him. All right. And you love to see it at the end of the movie where he's sort of like beside himself, like, oh no, I don't know what I'm going to do without Helen. I guess I didn't, I've got this little hot thing in the kitchen making raw steak salad for me. But you know what? Now I miss Helen a little bit. It's great.
Why? Which, by the way, really at her funeral, just those two and like are there, and then
the other professor guy that she didn't even really like that much.
Really? Like that's I would hope. You know what? Helen has every right to come back and haunt this fucker and kill him. You mean to tell me, I die and then like
yeah.
And you're bringing your mistress.
Scrounge up the rest of my. Yeah,
you're
right.
Bringing
exactly.
your mistress to my fucking.
You couldn't scrounge up a couple of my family members, and you brought your mistress to the funeral.
As the priest is like, ash to ashes, dust to dust. Amen. She's like sucking your dick in the parking lot. Like, she has every right to be like, haunting him and then kill him with a meat hook. Fuck his like, why, why? You deserve to get slaughtered, Doesn't matter how perky her tits were without a bra on and the end scene, So
I do also like how much of an asshole some of the characters are for just no reason. Like the paramedic dude, or like the guy, the psychiatric ward nurse that's taking her to the psychiatrist, and he's just like such an asshole to everyone in the hallway. Like, you're gonna open that door? What were you reading back there? Oh yeah.
No wonder why. Like, isn't it like why is that a trope?
The orderly is just a dick.
Yeah.
You'd think like part of the job description to get hired at a psychiatric facility is like, are you a dick? Can you
caring? Are you caring and compassionate? Do you understand mental illness? Yeah. Go somewhere else.
Yeah, you're not qualified for this. We need someone to absolutely roast these patients. Okay, every day. You come in, you harass them because they are not people, okay?
They watched One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and those like Geraldo specials on sanitariums and took notes like, this is how to act.
Yeah.
We have, I would say, yeah, but I mean, like, they're always like Ben Stiller, Ben Stiller and Happy Gilmore. Like,
did you hurt your little toes?
Oh yeah, your fingers hurt. Well, your back's supposed to hurt because you just pulled your duty, and you want his fingers hurt.
I know. I don't know where this whole idea of like psychiatric. You know what? It would have been a way weirder thing in movies to see like the very nice orderly coming in, like, "Oh, you doing okay?"
Yeah,
Minnesota accent. Oh, you doing okay? You poor thing. Let's get you a little tea. That would be the weird thing because every orderly is a fucking dick in these movies. This man included.
There is one thing we did not talk about.
What's that?
The top cameo in the movie.
Ted Raimi?
Yep.
Yeah. Ted Raimi gets one of the first scenes in this movie of playing a leather-clad bad boy. Which, how do you feel about Ted Raimi as
greaser?
Bad boy Billy. Do you think he pulls it off? You think he pulls off that bad boy look?
Not really, but
it's like, yeah. Sorry, Ted. Not really bad boy material. It's like in fucking Rugrats with Tommy and the greaser sixth grader or whatever. Remember that episode? Or whatever, that kid.
His mom, because Dee Dee taught like a community college.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's how I imagine Ted Raimi is. It's like, little dude. Yeah. But yeah, it's a nice cameo to have him in here anyway. And he's like, yeah, I'm getting laid today. Maybe.
Do you think he was like, hey, Sam, look what I'm doing?
Yeah,
Sam.
Right. Yeah. Sam probably helped get him in there for some reason. I don't know. Bernard Rose, not really a widely known name for directing. Did a couple of different movies, but not too much stuff. And surprisingly, Candyman is probably his most recognized movie. It's just like this weird one-off in his career of just like, yeah, I'm gonna do this movie, Candyman, and he wrote and directed it too. So it's just like,
just all came together.
yeah, it must just been just an idea he had, ran with it, and we get Candyman. And like I said, it's been a while since I read the Clive Barker story. I don't really think that there was much. I did do a little bit of looking up, and even, Candyman as a character is much different in the story. Like, it's not a black guy, for one thing. It's just a very different idea altogether. So this movie, for whatever reason, inspired by Clive Barker's Candyman, which is the movie, the book or the story, the short story is not even called The Candyman. So it's just an interesting idea that this came together and sort of takes on that whole idea of Candyman, but like it really expands upon it in a way that Clive Barker was not, did not do in his short story. So
now, I guess the final thing would be, because I don't know much about Clive Barker's work, because even one of the things that we've talked about in the show is how I've never seen any the Hellraiser. So how does this compare to like most of his work, do you think, from like a narrative and like story?
Yeah, so like
even though it's only based on like, so how would you compare like
so
this
like
to the rest of
yeah
his...
so I mean, I think that like Clive Barker does have a distinctive voice to him in terms of how his stories were, how they were written, what kinds of ideas he would explore. He was definitely, not like Stephen King in the fact that, he would just explore like fantasy and horror. He was kind of exploring the fringes of counterculture. He is a gay man. He did definitely explore sort of like the deviant side of sexuality a lot. Gayness itself, sort of those ideas. He was always very into like sort of BDSM elements to it as well, which is kind of, if you think about Hellraiser and the Cenobites and how they sort of had that BDSM element. He definitely liked to explore the darker side of like, romance and things like that. So so in a way, I think, Candyman as a story definitely fits within his wheelhouse of ideas. Now, the film itself of Candyman, I do think also kind of sits in that because, he definitely did touch on a lot of like urban elements as well. And how it kind of, the urban mythology is explored with like those dark fairy tale elements. So I think Candyman works pretty well towards Clive Barker's writing style, but it does definitely expand on it quite a bit more. The sexuality too, I think, is out of Clive Barker's wheelhouse too, in terms of the interracial sexuality, sort of that idea of pain within the relationship, because that's kind of Candyman's whole shtick is like, you're going to be my victim, but you being a victim is also like going to be the greatest pain pleasure. I think, all of that kind of fits in with Clive Barker too. So it's interesting. Candyman itself is its own like entity, but I do think, and I think too, we don't really see, when we talk about Candyman, we don't really see it as a Clive Barker story in the way that you see Hellraiser as a Clive Barker film, right? Because Clive Barker did direct movies. He didn't direct Hellraiser. He didn't direct Candyman. So it's interesting that we see Hellraiser as a Clive Barker movie, even though his name is really only in the credits for the writing. Whereas with Candyman, we don't really see it as a Clive Barker movie at all. So he's kind of, it's based on characters, but kind of its own entity at this point. So I don't know, but I think it's a really interesting movie. I think it still really holds up. And I guess that means, since we're talking about how we think about the movie itself as a rating, we have to give this movie a rating. So on a scale of 0 to 10 bloody braziers, that are doing the God's work with Virginia Madsen, what would you give Candyman?
I give it an 8 out of 10. I like it a lot. It still holds up to this day. I think it's a lot of fun. I do think it's a pretty well-written film. It's really smart. It's got a lot of nuance here. It is plotting, but I do think it's pays off. I think 'cause the story is so well written and well paced, and it does kind of come across more as a detective film at times. It does fit narratively. The violence in the film is a lot of it's left up to the imagination, but when you do get it, it is pretty effective and, gory. Candyman himself is, Tony Todd does a great job. He's an impressive and, very imposing figure, and I think, his bassy, velvety voice lends a lot to that too, and his figure, he's just a big bastard. But I think Candyman's a really, really good film. This is like a top-notch slasher film, and it's definitely one that I would recommend thoroughly to everyone. It's definitely held up 32 years into the future, right? So 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think I would give it an 8.5 out of 10. I think it's a really good movie. I think it has a lot of context and subtext to it. I remember first watching this and sort of being lost towards the end of the movie and trying to figure out exactly how I felt about what was occurring, because it does take a lot of different directions towards the end of the movie, where you do kind of have to draw your own conclusions about what the film is trying to tell you, because a lot of the last part of the movie is sort of wordless. It leaves the element of what its themes are kind of implied. So it doesn't necessarily tell you what to think about how the film ends or what to make of Helen's sort of mythologizing. You're kind of free to take with that what you will, which I think is really kind of important in this movie. It's nice to see that it doesn't really try to draw conclusions for you. It kind of forces you to make them yourself. So I really like that element to it. I think Candyman as a figure is really great. Tony Todd does a great job as Candyman. You don't really have Candyman without Tony Todd. I think it's really hard to pull that off. It'd be interesting to see what the 2021 Candyman does in terms of not really having Tony Todd in that central figure, to see if that really even seems like Candyman whatsoever. I feel like it's really hard to have a Candyman without Tony Todd, because he just embodies that element. Like, they are the same. They are equated to each other. You can't, Tony Todd's voice here, I saw somebody saying, like, reverberates the walls, and you kind of need that as Candyman. So he does a great job here. Love Virginia Madsen in this as well. I think she does a really good job of kind of selling that white woman mystique to her. Does a great job, really game for the part. And overall, I think this is just a really engaging film. It's an hour and 36 minutes long, but it really doesn't feel like that. And like you said, it takes like 50 minutes to just even get to Candyman as a person, conjured. But even still, the first 45 are still really interesting as sort of that noir-like movie of them exploring the mysteries of an urban legend. So I think all of that kind of is just really engaging leading up to the craziness of Candyman towards the end of the movie. So really fun, really great, still holds up over time since 1992. It's, movie's 32 years old now. Still great, looks great, stylistic. Like it a lot. 8.5 out of 10 for me. All right, so I think we're going to come back in a couple weeks and do our Thanksgiving episode. And this year, I announced what I wanted to do for Thanksgiving. Son-in-law. Son-in-law has become sort of a Thanksgiving tradition for me and my wife. So, curious what you think about son-in-law for our podcast episode this year.
Oh, no.
What? The Pauly Shore.
Oh, God. Why?
Because it's fucking funny. I love it.
I hate Pauly Shore so fucking much.
Oh man, no, we gotta do it. We gotta do it.
Oh my God, what are we doing here?
You're gonna love it. You're gonna love talking about Son-in-Law. It is a Thanksgiving movie as well.
Oh, do we have to?
Yep, we do.
We just do a goofy movie instead.
Yeah. That's a Pauly Shore you can
I can swallow because it's in Goofy.
Yeah.
It's in. God.
No,
They'll just
it's
do
good.
Encino Man or fucking Biodome.
I haven't seen Encino Man. We watched Biodome not too long ago, which was pretty fucking crazy too. With fucking Stephen Baldwin.
Stephen Baldwin. Yeah. Biodome used to be on TV a lot too.
Yeah, I know it did. Yeah. That one definitely has a much cheaper feeling than Son-in-Law. Son-in-Law at least has.
I don't remember you saying son-in-law as a thing to do.
I texted you not too long ago and I said, we're doing Son-in-Law this year for Thanksgiving. But yeah, that's what we're going to do. That's our Thanksgiving episode. Because remember, we always have a hard time trying to figure out what we're going to do for Thanksgiving. Because you run out of Thanksgiving movies. And Son-in-Law is one that we have not done.
I was thinking of one.
What?
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man?
Yes.
Why? Is it a Thanksgiving movie?
It's a list of films set around Thanksgiving. Action, Spider-Man 2002, Sam Raimi.
I bet you it has fucking
which I don't remember
all to do with Thanksgiving.
I don't remember anything to do with Thanksgiving in it, but you know.
Apparently there's one scene, because I just looked it up, Thanksgiving Spider-Man, and there's a YouTube video. It just says Peter Parker is late to Thanksgiving dinner. So it's probably like one scene. Oh yeah, and there's Willem Dafoe there, so they're all having Thanksgiving dinner together.
What if we did? Actually, there is a horror film. There's two of them. I'm surprised you haven't actually suggested Escape Room and Blood Rage.
We already did Blood Rage.
Did we? No, we didn't. Did
we? Yeah.
Hmm.
We already did Blood Rage. You hated it. Yeah.
See, that's how you know it's stuck.
Yeah.
Escape Room from 2019, though. It's a withdrawn student is challenged by a professor to do something that scares her over Thanksgiving break.
Huh. Didn't know that one. Is that a 2019 movie?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That must be why. I've definitely never seen it.
We can do your shitty fucking...
We're doing Son-in-Law. Then next time we'll do Escape Room.
No, well, it's not. The show might not even be on by now.
There might not be a podcast. We might not be allowed to have one.
We might be in camps by then.
That's right. Yeah, we might not. we might not be allowed to have one. I don't know. Maybe Elon likes our brand of schlocky humor.
Listen, I think if anything, we might get away with like you can't review movies and make witty comments. Just here's some tits and make a comment. You're like, those are boobs.
There you go.
Do we have any ideas going into the holiday season?
No, not really. I was thinking that we probably would just do just holiday no, holiday related movies again. Nothing specific.
So we're just going back to Festivus series. What if we did the Festivus episode of Seinfeld?
Oh, yeah, you could do that.
Mm.
Yeah, be a quick one. Should be a Patreon exclusive.
Robert Goulet specials.
Yeah, you only get this one if you subscribe to us. Yeah, I mean that would be fun. I think we'll probably just do the Festivus series again. Because I don't there were a couple of ideas that I was running through, which I think would probably end up driving us nuts. I was, we had talked about kind of jokingly, but kind of talked about doing a Christmas Carol for every episode, like 5 episodes of the Christmas Carol. It would be fucking really hard because, at a certain point you're like, yeah, it's the same story of a Christmas Carol. Like, how'd you feel about it last time? How do you feel about it now? And you're like, no, I still don't like Tiny Tim. He's an asshole and he's pulling himself up by his bootstraps. I don't know what to tell you. So it's not up to your employer to have to manage your health care or your children's health care.
You don't want like to hear Tiny Tim Scrooge running out every time and being like, come get the Christmas goose.
A Christmas goose for everyone. No, I know. Cause I thought it would be like a fun and funny and difficult thing to do. But at the same time, I do think it might drive us nuts to try to do a Christmas Carol every goddamn episode. Like, yep, that's another Christmas Carol.
We'll go in like chronological order from
Yeah.
like the 40s on up.
The last episode is just us wassailing.
Or like the 90 different versions of A Miracle on 34th Street.
Yeah, like all the different yeah, because that one would make a little bit more sense because at least you could do movies that are inspired by, where it has the same idea of Miracle on 34th Street, except, or not Miracle on 34th, It's a Wonderful Life. I mean, you could do movies inspired that have stories inspired by It's a Wonderful Life, right?
We haven't even done It's a Wonderful Life.
No. So, yeah, like there's a couple of different ideas, but I think we'll just fall back into our usual Festivus this year. All right, well, thanks for listening to our episode on Candyman. We hope you enjoyed it. Hope you go out and watch it.
We should probably do It's a Wonderful Life just because James Stewart and RFK Jr. have so much in common. They both sound like they're choking on water.
True. It's true. Yeah, so hopefully you tune back in for us for our Thanksgiving episode, just coming up very shortly. You can subscribe to us on pretty much any podcast app you can think of. We're on Apple Podcasts, our home base at Spotify, whatever you use to listen to your podcast, we're on it. So subscribe to us, leave us a nice review. We're on Facebook. We're not on Twitter anymore. I fucking deleted that shit. We're gone. Fuck Elon, fuck X, whatever the fuck they call it.
No, stop.
I refuse to call it X anyway. I always call it Twitter. But it's gone, so you don't need to worry about us on there anymore. We have a Facebook page, though. Facebook.com/Background Podcast.
Didn't you put us on Blue Sky?
No, we don't have Blue Sky yet, but I can make one. It's gradually growing. So, I always post our stuff on there anyway from Cultsploitation, but I could make us our own Blood and Background Podcast, and we could be the prime podcast on Blue Sky right now.
That's where we're going to get our 10 million followers.
That's right. That's right. We also have an email address at bloodandbackgroundpodcast@gmail.com where you can write to us, let us know what you like, what you don't like, what movies you want us to cover, and we'll keep that in consideration. You can also donate to us on our Patreon page or at our Spotify page. Anything you donate goes back towards beer. So we appreciate that in advance. Thanks for listening to us. And again, go back through our episode list. We've done so many episodes at this point, over 300. Go find another movie that interests you, especially as we're coming up on the Thanksgiving and holiday seasons, because we've done so many of those. So go back through, listen to our episodes. Thanks a lot for listening to us as we bicker and moan about movies. And until next time,
take care.